even among us Steiners, there comes a time when cold-blooded practicality must outweigh even family loyalty. My uncle has proven his inability to rule. As his niece, I grieve for his disappointment, but I will not let my emotions stand in the way of what I feel is right. I am Archon now. That is what I feel is right for me. More importantly, that is what I feel is right for the Commonwealth. Ever since the arrival of the clans to the Inner Sphere in 3049, the race to catch up with their technological advantage has been fierce. Isn't it amazing how a life and death situation can spur creativity? Of all the nearly miraculous feats demonstrated by the clans in those early years, one of the most impactful, besides the horror of being hit with a clan ERPPC, was the existence of the Omni-Mech. The ability to relatively quickly re-equip a BattleTech with a completely different set of weapons and equipment before a mission was an advantage that led to many victories for clan forces. Additionally, damaged weapon systems could usually be swapped out quickly for replacements, which kept mechs out on the battlefield and not languishing in repair bays. It was therefore entirely predictable that the leaders of the great houses sought to replicate the technology as best they could. The earliest attempts at creating an Inner Sphere Omnimech were rudimentary, but they did have several advantages which would cut down on the development time. The first was an understanding that it could be done. Often a major limitation for a brand new technology is the lack of confidence that continued work will lead to success. For the companies and research departments across the Inner Sphere, that doubt didn't exist. The second advantage was as the invasion progressed, more and more clan technology was being captured as salvage in the occasional victory. This trend ramped up quickly following major engagements at Twycross, Tukiad, and Luthien. For example, the famed Somerset Strikers provided some of the earliest samples of clan equipment following their time on Twycross. Reverse engineering cuts down on development time significantly. We have real-world examples of that from the 20th and 21st century in everything from cheap consumer goods to advanced military electronic systems. With nearly undamaged samples in their hands, the Draconis Combine leapt into the lead in Inner Sphere Omnimech technology with the Raptor, a 25-ton battlemech with 11.5 tons of pod space, which is quite impressive. The mech performed well, and it proved that it was possible to close the technological gap between the Inner Sphere and the clans. Within 20 years, the major houses of the Inner Sphere had each succeeded in their own Omnimech programs, and the results began to filter out into regular house units. As one of the great houses that felt the impact of the clan invasion as an existential threat, the Lyran Commonwealth sought every advantage possible to preserve what they could and prevent the Jade Falcons and later Steel Vipers from claiming even more territory. However, as with many entrenched bureaucracies and follies of the partial command economy, there were many misstarts, dead ends, logistics issues, and clashes between egos which slowed development of a Lyran Omnimech that could truly go toe-to-toe with the clans. They did see some success with the Firestarter O, though Luthien Armorworks designers did much of the actual Omni work there. Later, the Hauptmann and 95-ton Omnimech, which went into production in 3060, showed the Lyrans were capable of developing their own Omnimechs. As a huge fan of bureaucracy, I find it endlessly entertaining that the 55-ton GTL-10 Gauntlet was in development for almost 30 years. Coventry Metalworks fought an uphill battle in their effort to answer Archon Adam Steiner's call for a medium Omnimech design that could demonstrate the indomitable spirit of the Lyran Commonwealth. After many starts, restarts, and countless delays, both legitimate and political, eventually the Gauntlet would see final approval and production in 3128. Thankfully, the wait was worth it because the final product is a solid battlemech with a good chunk of its weight devoted to pod space. Those of you already well-versed in BattleTech lore are going to take one look at the Gauntlet and think, golly, that looks a lot like a bushwhacker, I reckon. Okay, maybe not exactly like that, but in my mind, every hypothetical viewer lives in Mayberry, North Carolina, circa 1962. Anyway, just go with it. As part of the politicking that took place to make the Gauntlet happen, concessions were made to take advantage of existing production lines as much as possible. The Bushwhacker, already a medium Lyran battlemech with a stellar reputation, was a natural choice as inspiration for the Gauntlet. Of course, this also meant that many a Lyran general with the name Steiner would benefit financially from the Gauntlet's production. Built around Coventry GTL Flex Endosteel and a Defiance 275 light engine, the Gauntlet makes use of every technological advantage the Inner Sphere has to offer. The mech's max speed is 86 km per hour, but the inclusion of a fixed mask system can boost that up to 108 km per hour. This makes the Gauntlet an unexpectedly speedy 55-ton battle mech. Though the mech doesn't include jump jets by default, they can be added in the mech's available pod space. It's also worth noting that the Defiance 275 light engine is not an XL, so there are only 2 engine critical locations on each of the side torsos. The 10 tons of Lexington Limited light ferrofibrous armor provides 169 points of armor protection, which is roughly equivalent to other 55-ton battle mechs like the Shadowhawk and Wolverine. The communication system is a Cyclops 24XS adaptable comlink, and the targeting and tracking system is a Cyclops Special Limited set. The cockpit was designed with enough open space to include a rumble seat, which allows for a passenger to sit relatively comfortably in the battle mech. Unfortunately, not all is roses, as the Gauntlet also has a reputation for a dodgy and inadequate life support system. Be careful when overheating, or you could end up passing out in an unexpected heatwave. The primary weapons configuration of the Gauntlet includes a heavy particle projection cannon in the right arm, a supercharger located in the center torso, and a Thunderbolt 10 missile launcher in the left arm, along with 2 tons of ammunition in the left torso protected by a case. The supercharger can boost the mech speed up to 13 hexes or 140.4 km per hour, which is impressive and was an attractive selling point for the battle mech in its early implementation. Both the heavy PPC and the Thunderbolt 10 share a max range of 18, so the mid-range is going to be the Gauntlet's prime hunting comfort zone. However, both weapons have a minimum range, 3 for the heavy PPC and 5 for the Thunderbolt, so it is crucial that Mechwarriors don't get overwhelmed by lighter units that can stay close. In that situation, employing that supercharger or mask is going to be a lifesaver. The Prime is a solid build that can do a fair amount of damage without any heat issues. I would happily run one in a lance of swift mediums or lights that could capitalize upon the damage that the Gauntlet could dish out. The first production runs of the Gauntlet faced an uphill battle against a system that really preferred to do things the way they always had. Of course, by 3128, it was becoming clear to those who didn't have the hands in the cookie jar that the way things had always run was not as effective as it had been in the past. The first Gauntlets delivered to LCAF units were actually not nabbed up by the commanders of elite regiments and battalions who would have normally jumped at the chance of claiming new technology. The benefit to the regular Lyran soldier is that they ended up seeing the Gauntlet in action much sooner than was expected. Basically, a lot of bureaucrats, and what are known in Lyran circles as social generals, didn't want to be held responsible if the Gauntlet wasn't a success. If you haven't heard that term before, imagine a military officer who only has his or her position due to their name, enjoys all the trappings and benefits of being a military officer, but typically does nothing to actually earn it or benefit the state in any way. That's a social general. The Alt-A configuration of the Gauntlet provides a little bit more flexibility in the application of directed violence than the primary does. The mech carries a light particle projection cannon in each arm and a pair of multi-missile launchers, one found in each side torso. The MML-7s each have 2 tons of ammunition, which can be split between SRMs and LRMs, or flavored to taste. Again, there are no heat issues in play here, and the light PPCs are solid producers out to 18 hexes. The only curious a bit about the Config A is the placement of the MML ammunition in the arms along with Case 2s. However, that's the nature of the beast with the locked-in armor and endosteel critical locations. When Clan Steel Falcon invaded Arcturus in 3142, the Lyran Commonwealth was put on notice. These were not the Falcons from the last century, but an entity much more violent and aggressive. The 15th Arcturian Guards participated in the valiant defense, but the rapid assault and breakthrough tactics that the Jade Falcons were employing meant the battle was not going to last long. A lance of gauntlets were put into the fray as part of a larger delaying action to allow civilians and other military and logistics units to escape. As the designers had hoped, the mech's speed allowed the Lyrans to hunt down the lighter Jade Falcon battle mechs that tried to break through into the rear guard. The Alt Configuration B version of the Gauntlet is an interesting interpretation of the short-range brawler. In practice, this thing will melt your face if you're not careful and you let it close on you. If it has a primary weapon, it would be an inner sphere medium pulse laser in the right torso, but backing it up are 10 standard medium lasers spread between the arms. A targeting computer boosts the accuracy of all of them, and 2 coolant pods will make firing all of them possible on the 10 double heat sinks. Oh, and it also carries a Guardian ECM, which may keep it stealthy enough to pop out at you like a 1980s hockey mask wearing serial killer. For the math disinclined, the 10 medium lasers plus the medium pulse laser would add up to 56 possible damage. Not too shabby for a 55-tonner. Our last official variant for the Gauntlet is the 10C. Again, this mech is focusing on the mid-range with a snub-nosed particle projection cannon and a light AC-5 autocannon right next to each other in the right arm. Over in the left arm, a TS EMP cannon was added. Now, if you need a refresher on what that is, the TS EMP cannon was invented in 3095 by the Republic of the Sphere scientists seeking to adapt earlier Word of Blake technology. When fired at a target weighing less than 200 tons, the TS EMP cannon will trigger a cascade of electrical interference that will attempt to shut down the target's systems. On a successful 2d6 roll, a targeted BattleMech could shut down, or just suffer a +2 to the next turns to hit rolls due to the impacted targeting and tracking systems. The effects of the TS EMP cannon last until the end of the next turn. The downside to wielding the cannon is that the capacitors used to charge it will explode for 10 damage when hit, similar to the Gauss rifle when it takes a critical hit. It's an interesting weapon, though I'm not as immediately keen on it as I am with the plasma weaponry, because the rules and effects are not easy to memorize. There is a TS EMP cannon weapons effects table along with the rules for the cannon in the Field Manual 3145 if you're interested in learning more about the basics I've outlined here. However, honestly, who needs yet another table to look at when they're playing BattleTech? The usefulness of the C variant is really going to depend on how you feel about the usefulness of the TS EMP cannon. The snub-nosed PPC is a cool weapon, but it's only doing 10 damage at the closest range of 9 hexes or less, and the light AC-5 is cooking at 5 damage per shot, which is not stellar for a 5-ton weapon with 2 tons of ammunition. At least the ammo has case too, so I guess that's neat. That's it for the official variants, but keep in mind there are likely dozens of other custom refits and loadouts based upon available weapons and ammunition across the Lyran units that are blessed to have the Gauntlet at the end of the Dark Age and moving into the Oakland era. The Lyrans could use all the help they could get. Now, I did cobble together a Mech Frog variant of the Gauntlet, so let's check it out. Based upon the existing variants, I noticed a distinct lack of a long-range option. So for the Gauntlet MF, we're going to start with a light Gauss rifle in the right arm. It can hit out up to 25 hexes and does a fair 8 damage, so could add some valuable fire toward an oncoming foe. In the left arm, I added a tried and true large laser, which will add another 8 damage starting in the mid-range. For close-up affairs, an inner sphere medium pulse laser located in the center torso can help keep the riffraff away, or at least make them pay for getting too close. I think it would be a good variant to toss into a lance with the others to make sure that a target can be hit at all ranges, but I am open to critique, so what do you think? So, why do we love the Gauntlet? It's an entirely respectable inner sphere Omnimech that benefits from the light engine and a good amount of pod space. As the Ill-Clan era progresses, with more and more clan technology being distributed across the inner sphere, the Gauntlet's pod space could be filled up with some interesting weapon combinations. With the Draconis Combine coming up with most of the good Omni-Mech designs, it's nice that the Lyrans at least get one winner. What do you think about the Gauntlet? Is it a mech you knew about already, or is it brand new? Is there anything you would tweak about its core structure, or are you good to go with your own custom variant? Let me know in the comments, we'll keep things going. Thank you for coming by, and if you hit all the buttons like and even subscribe, you'll be sure to see more BattleTech nonsense in the future. Taking the extra step and becoming a channel member helps the channel greatly and goes a long way to making all of this more viable. To those already on board, thank you, I really do appreciate it. Until we meet again, take care and go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.